I'm Hazel Mitchell, 32, the black sheep of my Greenwich family. When Mom called last month, her words cut deep. Don't come for Christmas, you'll embarrass us. 14 years of the same story, yet here I stood in their mansion's grand foyer watching my sister's boyfriend James turn pale as milk. Miss Mitchell, he stammered, eyes widening. You're the boss. That moment when worlds collided changed everything. My family never knew who I really was. Until now. Before I dive into this wild ride, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if your family has ever underestimated you. And subscribe for more stories about standing in your truth. Growing up as a Mitchell meant growing up with expectations. Our family home in Greenwich, Connecticut wasn't just a house, it was a statement. 5 bedrooms, manicured lawns, and a pool that hosted summer parties for Connecticut's elite. My mother Regina made sure every throw pillow was in its designated spot, and every family photo portrayed us as the epitome of success and harmony. Image is reality, Hazel, she would remind me whenever I questioned why we needed to maintain appearances so desperately. My father Robert, a third-generation investment banker, lived by the motto, Mitchells don't fail. He wore tailored suits even on weekends and measured success in golf club memberships and car models. Then there was my sister Ashley, 2 years younger but infinitely better at playing the game. Ashley could work a room by age 12, laughing at boring jokes from Dad's colleagues and complimenting their wives with practiced precision. And then there was me. Why can't you just fit in, Mom would ask, exasperated when I showed up to garden parties in practical flats instead of heels, or when I questioned why Dad's firm didn't invest in more sustainable businesses. While Ashley collected social connections, I collected business ideas. At 14, I started selling customized study guides to classmates. By 16, I developed an algorithm that predicted stock market trends with surprising accuracy. I showed Dad my work, hoping to finally connect with him through something he valued. He patted my head and said, "That's cute, honey. Leave the real investing to the professionals." What he didn't know was that I'd turned my $500 birthday money into $7,000 using that algorithm. I kept it secret, using the money to invest in programming courses online. I applied to MIT's business program behind my parents' backs, writing my essays late at night when everyone was asleep. When the acceptance letter came with a merit scholarship no less, I thought it would change everything. I imagined Dad's proud face, Mom finally seeing me for who I was, not who she wanted me to be. I planned to announce it at dinner, but when I came downstairs, I overheard my parents in the study. "I took care of it," Dad was saying. "Called in a favor with Richard at admissions. Her application has been withdrawn." "Thank goodness," Mom replied. Can you imagine? She'd be humiliated when she couldn't keep up. MIT, she's a Mitchell, not some computer geek. The Hamilton girls both got into Vassar. That's where Ashley will go too. I've already sent the deposit to Briarwood College, Dad continued. Liberal arts, good social connections, much more suitable. She'll thank us one day. I stood frozen outside that door, acceptance letter crumpled in my fist. They hadn't even given me a chance. Worse, they'd actively sabotaged my future while pretending to protect me. The next day, an email accidentally forwarded to our family account confirmed everything. My father had written to the MIT admissions director, "We appreciate your consideration of our daughter Hazel, but we've decided a business track isn't appropriate for her capabilities. We trust this withdrawal will open a spot for a more suitable candidate." That night I packed a single suitcase. I withdrew the $7,000 from my secret account, left a note saying I knew what they'd done, and took a train to Boston, the city I'd planned to call home anyway, just under very different circumstances. "She'll be back within a week," I overheard Mom telling Ashley as I left. Where would she even go? It would be 14 years before I returned to that house. Boston welcomed me with cold indifference, exactly what I needed after a lifetime of suffocating expectations. For the first 3 months, I crashed on my high school friend Darcy's dorm room floor at Northeastern. During days, I waited tables at a cafe near MIT. And at night I'd slip into the back of open lectures soaking up the education that should have been rightfully mine. Minimum wage barely covered food, let alone first and last month's rent for an apartment. I showered at the gym using a guest pass and stored my single suitcase of belongings under Darcy's bed. When her roommate complained, I spent 2 weeks sleeping in a 24-hour laundromat pretending to be waiting for my clothes while actually catching fragments of sleep between customer visits. "You're different than other girls your age," Lawrence Reed told me one morning. He was a regular at the cafe, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, always reading financial reports over black coffee. "You calculate the optimal path between tables. You memorize orders without writing them down. You're not meant to be serving coffee." When I laughed it off, he slid his business card across the table. "My tech startup needs an assistant. The pay isn't great, but it's better than this. And there's room to grow." Lawrence became more than a boss. He became the mentor my father never was. His startup, Reed Tech Solutions, developed software for financial analysis. I started answering phones and scheduling meetings, but spent my lunch breaks studying their code base. After 3 months, I approached Lawrence with suggestions for improving their algorithm's efficiency. "Who taught you to code like this?" he asked, impressed. "YouTube and determination," I replied. Within a year, I moved from assistant to junior developer to project manager. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by instant noodles and the burning desire to prove my parents wrong. When Reed Tech faced bankruptcy after losing a major client, I stayed up for 36 hours straight developing a new product feature that saved the company. Lawrence promoted me to vice president of product development. That's when I made a crucial decision. I would use my middle name Williams professionally. H.W. Mitchell became my business identity separate from Hazel Mitchell, the family disappointment. "Why hide your success?" Lawrence asked when I requested this arrangement. "Because I want to succeed or fail on my own terms," I explained. "No family connections, no family interference." After 5 years at Reed Tech, I spotted a gap in the market: venture capital specifically for women-led startups. With Lawrence's blessing and investment, I launched Mitchell Venture Partners. Our first fund raised $25 million, modest by industry standards but remarkable for a woman under 30 with no Ivy League degree. My reputation grew as H.W., a mysterious but shrewd investor with an uncanny ability to spot winning companies early. By 30, my firm managed $200 million in assets. My apartment overlooked the Charles River. I wore designer suits not to impress others but because I appreciated quality craftsmanship. Success on my terms tasted sweeter than any approval my parents could have given me. All those years I maintained minimal contact with my family. Birthday calls lasted 5 minutes. Christmas cards arrived with Ashley's perfect family photos and my mother's notes about their achievements, never asking about mine. When they did ask what I was up to these days, I kept it vague. Still in finance in Boston. Let them picture me as an administrative assistant or bank teller. Their lowered expectations had become my greatest shield. Occasionally, I'd see my father quoted in financial publications that my firm's research was mentioned in. I wondered if he ever noticed H.W. Mitchell's insights appearing just pages away from his outdated investment strategies. If he did, he never made the connection. I built my life brick by brick, completely separate from the Mitchell name, finding freedom in being underestimated. Until that fateful December, when Ashley called and those carefully constructed walls began to crumble. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in early December. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my personal phone, the one few people had the number to, lit up with Ashley's name. "Hazel, it's been a while." Her voice had that practiced warmth that never quite reached her eyes when we were growing up. I braced myself, calculator in hand, counting the months since we'd last spoken. 11. "Ashley! Everything okay?" "Better than okay. Listen, I'm calling about Christmas." She paused, probably for dramatic effect. Ashley had majored in theater before settling into her role as trophy wife. "We want you to come home this year. I nearly dropped my phone. 14 years of token invitations that came with conditions. Wear something appropriate. Don't bring up politics. Maybe don't mention your job. 14 years of declining. Mom and Dad really miss you, she continued, when I didn't immediately respond. We all do. It's time to put the past behind us. Don't you think family is family? Something in her voice didn't ring true. The Ashley I knew never did anything without an angle. Why now, I asked. Well, there was that telltale hesitation. I've met someone. It's serious. His name is James Hamilton. The Hamilton name registered immediately. Hamilton International Banking, one of the largest private banking institutions in the country. Old money, serious influence. He's wonderful, Hazel. We're not officially engaged yet, but his family is coming for Christmas Eve dinner. It would mean so much to have everyone together. There it was, the real reason. Ashley needed to present the perfect family to the Hamiltons. A missing sister would raise questions. I'm pretty busy these days, Ash. My schedule. Please, Hazel. Her voice dropped its polished edge. Mom and Dad are getting older. Don't you think it's time? Against my better judgment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe 14 years was enough. Maybe they had changed. Maybe I had proven enough to myself that I could face them now. Let me check my calendar, I said. I'll call you back. Before I could, Ashley added quickly, just so you know, we've told the Hamiltons you're coming. James is excited to meet my successful sister. I froze. Successful? Well, I mean, Ashley stumbled. We had to explain why you're never around. So we said you're, finding yourself. Still figuring things out career-wise. But happy, very happy. The familiar anger bubbled up. What exactly have you told people about me all these years, Ashley? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Ashley, look, it wasn't my idea, she finally said, voice defensive. Mom and Dad were embarrassed when you left. They told everyone you were going through some mental health issues, that you needed space, but they were supporting you financially. Each word hit like a physical blow. 14 years of lies. 14 years of being painted as the unstable failure, the family charity case. Supporting me financially, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. They had to say something, Ashley insisted. People asked questions. What were they supposed to tell their friends, that their daughter ran away and never looked back? That wouldn't exactly reflect well on the family, would it? I glanced around my corner office with its view of the Boston skyline, at the industry awards on my wall, at the photo of me shaking hands with the governor at last month's business leadership gala. No, I said slowly. We wouldn't want to damage the precious Mitchell reputation. So you'll come? Ashley pressed, missing or ignoring my sarcasm. Just for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. James's parents are very traditional. Family means everything to them. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted Hazel Mitchell to come home for Christmas, they would get her, all of her, not just the convenient parts they'd fabricated. I'll be there, I said. December 24th. Oh, thank God, Ashley breathed with obvious relief. And Hazel tried to dress appropriately. The Hamiltons are quite conservative. I ended the call and sat in silence, staring at the evening skyline as the office emptied around me. For 14 years I had protected myself by keeping my world separate. Now it was time to bring them crashing together. You're doing what? Rachel dropped the stack of contracts she'd been organizing. As both my executive assistant and closest friend, she was the only person who knew every detail about my family situation. Going home for Christmas, I repeated calmly, sipping my coffee. The same home where your parents sabotaged your education, lied about you for years, and haven't apologized for any of it. Rachel's expression shifted from shock to suspicion. Wait, are you planning some kind of revenge? Because while I fully support that concept, I need to remind you that we have the Jakarta deal closing right after New Year's. I laughed. No elaborate revenge schemes. Just facing them as myself. The real myself. As H.W. Mitchell, venture capital phenom, who's been featured in Forbes 30, Under 30, Something like that. We were standing in Neiman Marcus where I'd impulsively decided to shop for appropriate clothes for the holiday. The irony wasn't lost on me here. I was potentially dressing to impress the very people I'd spent years proving I didn't need approval from. What about this? Rachel held up a power suit in deep crimson, bold, confident, unmistakably expensive. I shook my head. That's what HW would wear to intimidate a boardroom. I need to be Hazel, but the real Hazel, not their version. After 2 hours, I settled on a simple black dress, elegant but not flashy, and a camel coat that cost more than my monthly rent during my first year in Boston. Subtle quality that spoke volumes without screaming. So, what's the game plan? Rachel asked as we left the store. Waltz in and announce, surprise, I'm actually wildly successful. I'm not sure yet, I admitted. Part of me wants to see how long it takes them to figure it out, or if they even would. Back at my apartment as Rachel helped me pack, my phone rang. Brian Mitchell, my cousin and the only family member I'd stayed in occasional contact with over the years. Heard you're coming for Christmas, he said when I answered. Ashley's been telling everyone. Aunt Regina is in full damage control mode. Brian was Uncle Thomas's son, the branch of Mitchells, who were considered slightly less prestigious because Thomas had chosen to become a doctor rather than join the family investment firm. Brian had followed his father's footsteps into medicine, another family disappointment by Mitchell standards. Damage control, I repeated. She's briefing everyone on what not to ask you about. Jobs, relationships, life, achievements, all off the table. She told Mrs. Whitaker, you're between opportunities but staying positive. I could hear his eye roll through the phone. Also, you should know Uncle Robert's firm isn't doing so hot. The market's shift toward ethical investing hit them hard. This was news to me. I kept tabs on major financial players but had deliberately avoided researching my father's company. How bad? Bad enough that this Hamilton connection is their Hail Mary. Ashley landing James would mean doors opening, emergency capital, the work. I processed this information, pieces falling into place. So that's why they suddenly need the whole family to play happy reunion. Exactly. And Hazel, there's something else. Brian's voice lowered. I overheard Ashley and Aunt Regina planning some kind of, showcase, something about reminding everyone how generous they've been to poor Hazel despite everything. My stomach tightened. They're planning to humiliate me. I think so. I don't know details, but it felt orchestrated. I thought you should be warned. After thanking Brian, I sat on my bedroom floor surrounded by half-packed luggage, suddenly questioning my decision. Maybe I should just call the whole thing off. Rachel, who'd heard my side of the conversation, sat beside me. You know what, go. Go and be exactly who you are. Not to show off, not for revenge, but because hiding your light has given them power they don't deserve. She was right. For all my professional confidence, I'd been hiding from my family out of what fear, pride. It was time to stop running. Later that evening, I was in my office finalizing details for a company-wide holiday bonus when my phone pinged with a text from Ashley, confirmed with James and his parents. They're so excited to meet you, Dad says. Don't worry about bringing gifts. Just yourself is enough. The smiley face couldn't mask the condescension. Don't worry about gifts you can't afford, poor Hazel. Little did they know that the greatest gift, or perhaps the cruelest, would be the truth. The Mitchell family home hadn't changed in 14 years. Same imposing colonial facade. Same pretentious lion statues flanking the driveway. Same Christmas wreath on the door, exactly 30 inches in diameter, with precisely arranged pine cones and a perfectly centered red bow. What had changed was how it made me feel. This house that once loomed so large in my mind now seemed smaller, less intimidating. I'd built skyscrapers in my mind since I'd last stood here. This was just a house. I parked my rental car deliberately modest behind a gleaming Range Rover with Hamilton Banking's logo subtly emblazoned on its side mirror. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. Mom opened it, smile. already fixed in place. Regina Mitchell, still blonde at 62 thanks to monthly salon appointments, looked like she'd stepped out of a Connecticut lifestyle magazine. Hazel. Her eyes performed a quick scan of my appearance, lingering fractionally on my handbag Hermes, but understated, and boots handmade Italian leather. I saw the momentary confusion as she tried to reconcile my obviously expensive taste with her narrative of my struggling existence. "You look, well, different." Her hug was brief, perfunctory. The scent of Chanel No. 5 transported me instantly back to childhood, watching her prepare for parties. I wasn't old enough to attend, being reminded to be good and not embarrass the family. "The guest room is all prepared," she continued, leading me inside. "We had to move you to the one downstairs since we converted your old room to storage after you left. The message was clear: you gave up your place in this house." Dad was in his study, phone pressed to his ear. He gave me a distracted wave but didn't end his call. I caught fragments about interest rates and extension possibilities, the language of a man trying to keep his financial ship from sinking. Ashley appeared at the top of the stairs, immaculate as always. Designer jeans, cashmere sweater, hair falling in perfect waves. "Hazel, you made it." Her voice carried the practiced enthusiasm of someone who had once taken a semester of broadcasting classes. Behind her stood a tall man with the confident posture of someone who'd never worried about money a day in his life. James Hamilton III had the polished good looks of old money, wavy brown hair, strong jaw, and the kind of tan people get from winter vacations in street parts, not from actual outdoor work. "So this is the mysterious sister," he said, descending the stairs with Ashley clinging to his arm. "James Hamilton." He extended his hand, his grip firm but not aggressive. His eyes held polite interest but nothing deeper, the look of someone meeting a footnote, not a chapter. "Hazel Mitchell. Nice to meet you. Ashley tells me you're in finance too, in Boston." Before I could answer, Mom interjected smoothly. "Hazel has tried various paths. She's very independent." Her tone suggested independent was a euphemism for unsuccessful. "I found my niche," I said simply. "Well, we're all about finding the right fit at Hamilton," James replied with practiced charm. "Not everyone is cut out for high-level finance, of course. We have excellent customer service positions that many find fulfilling." Ashley shot him a grateful look for his diplomatic handling of her embarrassing sister. "The Whitakers and Blanchards are coming for dinner tonight," Mom announced, changing the subject. "And the Goldsteins. They always ask about you, Hazel." Translation: "We've invited an audience for your failure." "How thoughtful," I replied. Mom led me to the guest room, a small space in the basement that clearly doubled as storage for seasonal decorations. The twin bed was made up with floral sheets I recognized from my childhood, a subtle reminder that I was still viewed as the awkward teenager who'd left all those years ago. "Dinner's at 7, Mom said, closing the door behind her. "Cocktails at 6. Wear something appropriate." As her footsteps retreated up the stairs, I sat on the twin bed and opened my suitcase. From its hidden compartment, I removed a small leather portfolio containing documents I'd prepared just in case, proof of my company's value, press clippings, bank statements, insurance against whatever my family had planned. I was hanging up my clothes when I overheard Ashley and Mom in the hallway above. "Is she still?" Ashley's voice trailed off. "A disappointment." "Yes." Mom's reply was crisp. "But the important thing is keeping her under control until the Hamiltons leave. Your father says James's parents are thorough. They investigate potential family connections before approving serious relationships. We need to show we support Hazel despite her issues. I've told James she struggles with anxiety and couldn't handle the pressure of traditional success," Ashley said. "He's very understanding. His cousin apparently had a nervous breakdown at Princeton." Their voices faded as they moved deeper into the house, but the message was clear. I wasn't here as family. I was here as a charity case, a demonstration of the Mitchells' magnanimous nature. How generous they were to include their troubled daughter despite her embarrassing life choices. By the time I emerged for cocktails, the house was filling with familiar faces, parents, friends, who'd known me since childhood, now greeting me with the careful enthusiasm people reserve for those they believe are fragile. "Hazel, how wonderful to see you after all this time," Mrs. Whitaker gushed, gripping my hand between her bejeweled fingers. "Your mother tells us you're doing so well in Boston." "I am," I confirmed, meeting her gaze steadily. "Such a special city. My niece works at a lovely little coffee shop there. Perhaps you know it, the Bluebird Cafe on Newbury Street." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. The screen displayed urgent Jakarta deal with Rachel's name below it. "Excuse me," I said. "I need to take this." As I stepped away, I heard Mrs. Whitaker whisper to Mom, still dealing with her episodes. Mom's reply floated after me. "We try to be supportive. It's all we can do." I gripped my phone tighter, retreating to the basement guest room. This was going to be an even longer weekend than I'd anticipated. The call from Rachel wasn't just for show. We really did have an emergency with the Jakarta deal. Our lead investor was threatening to pull out, citing concerns about political stability in the region. $50 million and 8 months of work hung in the balance. "They want reassurance from you personally," Rachel explained. "I've set up an emergency video conference. Everyone's waiting." I glanced at my watch. 6:45 p.m. Dinner was at 7. "Set it up. I need 15 minutes. I closed the guest room door, opened my laptop, and transformed. Back straight, voice steady, every trace of hesitation gone. This was H.W. Mitchell territory, where I knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. The video conference connected revealing faces from 3 continents, our investors in New York, the startup team in Jakarta, legal counsel in Singapore. I addressed each concern methodically, authoritative without being aggressive. "The political situation has been factored into our risk assessment from day one," I explained, pulling up projections I'd prepared months earlier. "If you look at comparable markets during similar transitions," I was deep in negotiations, directing my team on revised terms and security provisions when the door opened behind me. I didn't turn, holding up one finger in the universal "wait a moment" gesture. "We'll increase the contingency fund by 3%, not 5%, I told the investor firmly. "The data doesn't support a higher figure. Marshall, please walk Mr. Tanaka through the updated risk matrix." Only when I delegated the next steps did I mute my microphone and turn to find James Hamilton standing in the doorway, his expression a mixture of confusion and dawning recognition. "Sorry to interrupt," he said slowly. "Dinner's ready, but..." His eyes darted to my screen, where several serious-looking executives waited. "You're in the middle of something." "I'll be up in 10 minutes, I replied. "Business emergency." Instead of leaving, he stepped further into the room, staring at my screen. "That's Tanaka. Satoshi Tanaka. You know him." "Everyone in international banking knows Tanaka. He doesn't take meetings with just anyone." James's eyes narrowed, reassessing me. "Who exactly are you talking to right now?" I unmuted briefly. 5 minutes, everyone. Reviewing the documents. Then muted again. "The Jakarta Sustainable Energy Fund," I said simply. $50 million initial investment with a potential second round of $80 million if certain benchmarks are met. James blinked rapidly. "You're with Verdant Pacific, I thought." He stopped himself. "Wait. H.W. Mitchell is leading that deal." "Yes." You're not." I extended my hand as he had done earlier, but now with a very different energy between us. "Hazel Williams Mitchell, H.W. to my colleagues." The color drained from his face as various realizations hit him simultaneously. You're the boss." It wasn't a question. "Hamilton International is underwriting part of the Jakarta Fund. I've been on calls where your name, I mean not your full name, but people talk about you like what?" I asked quietly. "Like you're someone who matters," he finished, then winced at his own phrasing. Before he could backpedal, I nodded toward my screen. "I need to finish this. Please tell everyone I'll be up shortly." Of course," he stammered, backing toward the door. Then, in a tone completely different from his earlier condescension, "Take whatever time you need. Boss, the door closed behind him. I took a moment to compose myself before unmuting, but inside something had shifted. The careful separation I'd maintained for 14 years had just collapsed. When I finally made it upstairs, the dining room fell silent as I entered. James was whispering urgently to Ashley, whose expression cycled rapidly between disbelief, confusion, and calculation. "So sorry for the delay," I said, taking my seat noticeably at the far end of the table away from the important guests. "Work situation." Dad cleared his throat. "Hazel has a little job in Boston," he explained to the table at large. "Something in administrative support, isn't it, dear?" Before I could answer, James interjected. "Actually, Hazel was just on a call with Satoshi Tanaka and the Jakarta Energy Consortium." His tone had completely transformed, respectful, almost deferential. The table stared at him blankly. "The $50 million Sustainable Energy Fund," he clarified, looking incredulous that this needed explanation. "One of the most innovative financing structures in renewable energy this year." Dad's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "I think you must be confused, James. Hazel works. She's H.W. Mitchell." James interrupted, then noticing my slight headshake added, "Colleague. Works directly with H.W. Mitchell." He looked at me apologetically for the half-truth. The name registered with my father, whose expertise may have been fading but who still read the financial press. "Mitchell Venture Partners, that H.W. Mitchell. You know the firm?" James asked, surprised. "Of course I know it," Dad replied stiffly. "Unconventional investment strategies, but undeniably successful. Focused on women-led businesses, sustainable technologies." He turned to me with narrowed eyes. "You work for Mitchell Ventures." I met his gaze steadily. In a manner of speaking, Mom, desperately trying to maintain control of her dinner party narrative, jumped in. "How wonderful that you found such a good position, Hazel. Is it very recent? You should have told us." "Not recent, no," I replied. "I've been with the firm since its founding." Ashley stared at James, then at me, her expression hardening as she sensed a shift in the room's dynamics. Her boyfriend was looking at her sister with respect, something that violated the natural order of the Mitchell family as she understood it. Throughout dinner, James continued treating me differently, asking my opinion on market trends, mentioning colleagues we apparently had in common, even moving to sit closer to me during dessert. Each deferential comment from him caused greater confusion among the dinner guests and mounting tension in my family members. The evening proceeded with this strange undercurrent, James treating me like an important business connection, my family scrambling to understand what was happening, and the dinner guests watching the drama unfold with poorly disguised fascination. When we finally moved to the living room for after-dinner drinks, Mom pulled me aside, her fingers digging into my arm. "What exactly have you told James about yourself?" she hissed. "Nothing but the truth," I replied calmly. "Which is apparently more than you've told anyone about me for the last 14 years. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't ruin this for Ashley, whatever game you're playing." "No games, Mom. Just reality catching up." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "And tomorrow at the Christmas party, reality is going to catch up with all of us." The Mitchell Christmas Eve party had been an institution since before I was born. Every year, the same crowd of Greenwich elite gathered to admire Mom's impeccable decorations, drink Dad's expensive scotch, and engage in the competitive sport of subtle bragging disguised as casual conversation. I'd spent the morning helping with preparations, partly to be useful, partly to observe. Dad remained distracted, making frequent trips to his study for quick calls that left him increasingly agitated. Mom fluttered around directing caterers with military precision, pausing occasionally to remind me how things should be done. Ashley and James had gone to pick up his parents from the train station. "The poinsettias go on the console table, not the sideboard," Mom corrected me for the third time. "Honestly, Hazel, some things never change." I moved the flowers without comment, saving my energy for the battles that mattered. The party began at 7. I wore my black dress, simple, elegant, expensive, in a way that spoke of confidence rather than showing off. As guests arrived, I noticed James introducing me to his parents with unexpected enthusiasm. "This is Hazel Mitchell, Ashley's sister," he said, then added with meaningful emphasis. "She works in venture capital, sustainable energy financing." Mrs. Hamilton, a slender woman with shrewd eyes, shook my hand. "James mentioned you're involved with the Jakarta project. Ambitious undertaking. We believe it's worth the risk," I replied. "We being?" Mr. Hamilton prompted. Before I could answer, Ashley appeared, sliding her arm through James's possessively. "Daddy's looking for you," she told me, not bothering to hide her irritation. "Something about helping in the kitchen." As I moved away, I heard Mrs. Hamilton ask, "I thought you said her sister was unemployed." Ashley's reply was too quiet to catch. In the kitchen, Dad wasn't waiting. Instead, I found Brian arranging cheese platters. "Heads up," he murmured as I approached. "They've invited Cassandra Dunning." The name hit like a physical blow. Cassandra had been my chief tormentor throughout high school, the queen bee who'd made it her mission to remind me how I failed to meet Greenwich standards of success. "Why would they?" I began, then stopped as understanding dawned. "They're planning something," Brian nodded grimly. "I overheard Ashley and Aunt Regina this morning. Some kind of speech planned with you as the centerpiece. Something about family loyalty despite challenges, and supporting Hazel through her struggles." So this was their play, public humiliation disguised as family devotion. The perfect performance to convince the Hamiltons what wonderful supportive people the Mitchells were, while simultaneously putting me in my place. "There's more," Brian added. "Uncle Robert's company is in worse trouble than I thought. They're not just hoping for connections through James, they need an actual bailout. The Hamilton Bank is their last hope before bankruptcy." The pieces clicked into place. No wonder Dad had been so distracted, Mom so controlling, Ashley so desperate. They weren't just putting on a show, they were fighting for survival. As the party reached full swing, I moved through rooms that once intimidated me, observing familiar faces with new perspective. These weren't titans, they were anxious people clinging to status in an uncertain world. Even Cassandra Dunning, now approaching with predatory smile, seemed smaller than in my memories. "Hazel Mitchell," she cooed, air kissing near my cheek. "What a surprise to see you here. It's been ages." "Cassandra, you look well." "Thank you. Just got back from the Maldives, the children's second vacation this year." "And you," Ashley mentioned, "you're in Boston." Before I could respond, a woman approached us, tall, elegant, vaguely familiar. "Excuse me," she said, "but are you Hazel Mitchell from Mitchell Venture Partners?" Cassandra's smile faltered as I turned to the newcomer, recognizing her now, Miranda Choi, head of a clean energy startup we'd funded last year. "Miranda, what a surprise. I didn't know you knew my family." "I don't actually. I'm here with my husband. He went to school with James Hamilton." Her eyes were bright with excitement. "I had no idea H.W. Mitchell was Hazel Mitchell. I've been trying to get a meeting with you for months to discuss our Series B." Cassandra looked between us, confusion evident. "You two know each other." "Miss Mitchell's firm was our lead investor," Miranda explained. "Changed everything for us. We just hit $50 million in valuation." Cassandra's expression was priceless, like someone had rewritten physical laws while she wasn't looking. "You're an investor." Before I could respond, a distinct tapping sound cut through the party noise. Mom stood by the grand piano, champagne glass and knife in hand. "If I could have everyone's attention," she called out. "It's time for our special Christmas Eve toast." The room quieted. Guests gathered around as Mom launched into her practice speech about family traditions and togetherness. Dad joined her, his public face firmly in place despite the stress lines around his eyes. "This year is particularly special," Mom continued as we welcomed the Hamilton family into our celebration. She nodded toward James's parents. "And of course, we're so thankful to have all our family present, including our daughter Hazel, who has returned to us after her long absence." The spotlight shifted uncomfortably to me. I maintained a neutral expression as Mom continued. "Family means supporting each other through all of life's challenges. Some take traditional paths to success, she gestured to Ashley, while others require extra patience and understanding. Her gaze settled meaningfully on me. The Mitchells have always believed in standing by family members even when their choices are unconventional. That's why we've continued to support Hazel through her various struggles over the years. The room had gone painfully quiet. I felt rather than saw Brian move closer to me in solidarity. In fact, Dad added, taking over smoothly, we have something special to share with Hazel tonight. From his jacket he removed an envelope. We've kept these for you all these years, hoping someday you'd be ready. With growing dread, I accepted the envelope and opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, some yellowed with age. I recognized the handwriting on the top one. Immediately, Lawrence Reed, my mentor. The postmarks spanned years, starting from shortly after I'd left home. Your old boss tried to reach you many times, Dad explained to the rapt audience. We thought it best not to forward them given your fragile state at the time. But now that you're doing better, the implication was clear. They deliberately intercepted communications meant for me, likely including job offers, opportunities, support that could have helped me when I was struggling most, all while pretending it was for my own good. The room swam before me. This public gift was meant to reinforce their narrative. Poor, unstable Hazel, whose family protected her even from herself. They had no idea that Lawrence had eventually found me anyway, becoming the mentor and supporter they had failed to be. I looked up from the letters to see Ashley's satisfied smirk, Mom's manufactured compassion, Dad's assumption that this display of care would put me in my place. It was the final betrayal, using my past struggles which they had helped create as a public performance of their own virtue. Something inside me hardened. No more hiding. No more separate worlds. It was time for truth. I stood in the center of the Mitchell living room, my parents' smug benevolence radiating toward me, surrounded by Greenwich society waiting for the appropriate display of gratitude. The intercepted letters felt heavy in my hands, tangible proof of their sabotage disguised as protection. Thank you for keeping these, I said finally, my voice steady. They're quite the collection. Mom nodded encouragingly. We only wanted what was best for you, dear. Did you read them before hiding them from me? The question hung in the air. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Of course not, he blustered. They were private. Private, yet not important enough to forward to their intended recipient. I withdrew one letter, opening it carefully. This one's dated February 2010. Lawrence was offering me a promotion to Director of Product Development. Salary of $95,000 plus stock options. I looked up. That would have been helpful during the months I was sleeping on friends' couches. Murmurs rippled through the room. Mom's smile became strained. Ancient history, she said brightly. The important thing is you've found steady employment now. James, standing nearby with growing awareness of what was unfolding, interjected. More than steady. Hazel is. I raised a hand, stopping him. It's all right, James. I can speak for myself. The room fell silent again. I turned to address the gathered crowd. For 14 years, my family has maintained a convenient narrative about me. The unstable daughter who couldn't handle pressure. The failure who needed constant support. It's a story that made them look charitable while justifying their control. I looked directly at my parents. It's also complete fiction. Dad stepped forward. Hazel, you're making a scene. No, Dad. I'm making a correction. I placed the letters on the piano. Lawrence Reed did eventually find me. He became the mentor you never were. When his company faced bankruptcy, I developed a product that saved it. When I spotted a gap in the venture capital market, he helped me start my own firm. I paused, watching comprehension dawn on various faces. My name is Hazel Williams Mitchell. I use my middle name professionally, H.W. Mitchell. I founded Mitchell Venture Partners. We currently manage over $200 million in assets, specializing in women-led companies and sustainable technologies. The silence that followed was absolute. Ashley's face had gone white. Mom's glass was frozen halfway to her lips. Dad looked like he'd been struck. Miranda Choi broke the silence. It's true. Her firm funded my company's Series A. We're now valued at $50 million. That's impossible, Dad finally managed. H.W. Mitchell is. He trailed off, unable to complete the sentence with a man without revealing his own biases. Is what, Dad, too successful to be your daughter? Too powerful to be the girl you dismissed as not having what it takes? Ashley found her voice anger overtaking shock. You let us believe you were struggling all this time. How could you lie to your own family? The irony was breathtaking. I never lied, I replied evenly. You never asked. You were too busy creating your own version of my life to bother with the truth. James's father stepped forward. I know your firm well, Miss Mitchell. Your Jakarta fund is partly underwritten by our bank. He extended his hand with genuine respect. Remarkable work. This public validation from a Hamilton directed at me rather than Ashley shifted the power dynamics visibly. Mom's composure cracked entirely. Why didn't you tell us? She demanded, voice shrill. All these years letting us worry, or use me as your cautionary tale, I countered. And why would I tell you? So you could claim credit for success you actively tried to prevent. Dad, ever the strategist, was already recalculating. I could almost see him trying to determine how my success could be leveraged for the family's benefit. Well, this is wonderful news, he announced, attempting to regain control of the narrative. Our Hazel, always the independent one. We always knew you had potential. Stop. My voice cut through his platitudes. You don't get to rewrite history that easily. You intercepted job offers that could have helped me when I was sleeping in a laundromat. You told everyone I was mentally unstable when I was actually building a business. You've spent 14 years undermining me while pretending to support me. I turned to the room at large. The Mitchells aren't who they pretend to be. My father's investment firm is weeks away from bankruptcy. This whole performance, including my public humiliation, was orchestrated to impress the Hamiltons into a financial rescue. Dad's face contorted with fury. How dare you? How dare I tell the truth? I stepped closer. I learned from Lawrence Reed's first letter, which you kept from me, that he searched for me for months after I left. You told him I was too unstable to contact directly. You told him you were supporting me through treatment. You actively sabotaged my early career. The final betrayal laid bare. I watched my father's face as his carefully constructed image crumbled before the very people whose approval he craved. In the stunned silence that followed, I made a decision. Despite everything, we're still family. Mitchell Ventures can help restructure your company, Dad. We can bring in professional management, implement sustainable practices, create something that actually adds value instead of just extracting it. But there are conditions. Conditions, he repeated the word, foreign to a man who had always set the terms. You step down. No involvement in day-to-day operations. Ashley can join the company if she wants, starting at entry level like anyone else learning the business properly. And what would your stake be in all this? Mrs. Hamilton asked shrewdly. Saving my family's legacy but transforming it into something ethical. Something that reflects my values, not just my name. The Christmas Eve party dissolved into small clusters of urgent conversation after that. Some guests made hasty exits, unwilling to witness the Mitchell family's public unraveling. Others, scenting blood in the water, lingered to catch every detail of the downfall. I walked out onto the terrace, needing air. After a moment, Brian joined me. That, he said, was the most spectacular Christmas Eve toast in Mitchell history. I laughed, despite myself. Not what I planned when I came here, but maybe what needed to happen. He leaned against the railing beside me. What will you do now? I looked back at the house, the place that had once defined me, then rejected me, and now seemed smaller than I remembered. Spend the night at your place if you're offering. I don't think the basement guest room is still available to me. Always welcome, he confirmed, And after that, I watched through the window as my parents huddled with the Hamilton's damage control in full swing. Ashley stood apart, her perfect world visibly crumbling around her. For the first time, I felt no satisfaction in her distress, only recognition of a shared childhood that had shaped us in different ways. After that, I built something new. Something that might actually heal instead of harm. We stood in comfortable silence, Christmas lights reflecting off the snow-covered lawn. The house that had once seemed the center of my world now looked like what it was, just a house with flawed people inside trying their best and often failing. "Merry Christmas," Hazel Bryan said quietly. "Merry Christmas." I took a deep breath of cold air. I think it might actually be this year. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. I woke in Brian's guest room momentarily disoriented until the events of the previous night came flooding back. The revelation, the confrontation, the shattered illusions on all sides. Over coffee, Brian filled me in on the aftermath I'd missed. "James and Ashley had quite the argument after you left. Apparently he's fascinated by your business model and kept talking about it. Ashley didn't appreciate the attention shift, and my parents. Uncle Robert was still in damage control mode when I left. Aunt Regina had taken to her bed with a migraine." He used air quotes around the last word. I nodded, unsurprised. Mom's migraines had always been her retreat when reality became too uncomfortable. "You know they'll try to spin this," Brian warned. "By next week they'll be telling everyone they secretly supported your business ventures all along." "Let them try," I replied. "I have the intercepted letters. I have the facts. I'm done living in their alternate reality." After breakfast, I decided to drive past the family home before heading to the airport. I told myself it was for closure, but part of me wondered if there was still some unfinished business, some final word that needed saying. To my surprise, Dad was in the driveway loading bags into his car. He straightened when he saw me pull up. "Hazel." His voice carried none of its usual authority. He looked older in the morning light, more vulnerable. "I didn't expect to see you again before you left." "Neither did I admitted. Yet here I am. We stood awkwardly, decades of miscommunication stretching between us. "I meant what I said last night," I finally offered. "About helping with the company. The offer stands." He stared at his shoes, this man who had never shown uncertainty in my presence. "Why would you do that, after everything?" It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself during the sleepless hours of the night. "Not for you," I answered honestly. "For the employees who depend on that company. For the Mitchell name, which I still carry professionally. And maybe for the dad I needed but never had in case he's still in there somewhere." He flinched at that but didn't argue. "Your mother is processing." He gestured vaguely toward the house. "This isn't how she imagined Christmas going." "It's not how any of us imagined it," I replied. "But maybe it's what needed to happen." A movement at the upstairs window caught my eye, Ashley watching us. After a moment's hesitation, she disappeared from view. Seconds later, the front door opened, and she emerged, still in pajamas and robe despite the cold. "I thought I heard your car," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. We regarded each other cautiously, these genetic strangers who had grown up side by side. I realized with sudden clarity that Ashley, for all her apparent confidence, had been shaped by the same parental expectations that had driven me away. She had simply chosen a different survival strategy, conformity rather than rebellion. "James called off the engagement," she said abruptly. "Last night after everyone left." "I'm sorry. Are you?" It was hardly a coincidence that he changed his mind after learning about your position. "I didn't come back to sabotage your relationship, Ashley." "Didn't you? You could have told us years ago who you'd become. Instead, you let us believe." "I let you believe what you wanted to believe," I interrupted gently. "You never asked me directly about my life. Not once in 14 years. You were too invested in the narrative that I'd failed." She had no response to that. "For what it's worth," I continued, "if James only wanted you for your family connections, you're better off without him. Easy for you to say, she replied bitterly. You don't need anyone. You've made that perfectly clear. The irony struck me, Ashley, who had always been the favored child, envying my independence. I had spent years envying her acceptance and belonging. We had each wanted what the other had. That's not true, I said. I've built a network of people I trust and who trust me. I just stopped looking for that validation from people who couldn't give it. Dad cleared his throat. Your offer. About the company. What exactly would it entail? Business, the only language he truly understood. I outlined the potential restructuring, debt reorganization, professional management team, strategic pivot towards sustainable investments, gradual rebuilding of the Mitchell reputation as ethical investors. And my role would be, he asked cautiously, advisory only. No executive power. I was firm on this point. But you'd retain founder emeritus status. Your name on the door but new hands on the wheel. He nodded slowly, calculation visible behind his eyes. And Ashley, if she's interested, she can join the new organization. Starting at the bottom, learning the business properly. I turned to my sister. You're smart, Ashley. You've just never had to use it for anything real. She looked surprised by the compliment, then suspicious, then briefly thoughtful. I'm flying back to Boston this afternoon, I continued. If you're serious about discussing this further, call my office next week. My actual office, not the fictional one you've imagined all these years. As I turned to leave, Ashley called after me. Was any of it true? What they said about the early years? Were you ever really struggling? I paused, hand on my car door. Yes. For almost 2 years. I slept on floors and in a laundromat. I ate ramen for weeks straight. I worked 3 jobs while learning coding at night. I met her eyes directly. But not for the reasons you were told. Not because I couldn't handle pressure. Because I chose freedom over false security, truth over comfortable lies. The 3 of us stood in the cold December morning, a broken family facing reality perhaps for the first time. There were no easy reconciliations, no tearful embraces, no magical healing of 14 years of deliberate misunderstanding. Just the first tentative step toward something more honest. Back in Boston that evening, I told Rachel everything as we sorted through the post-Christmas workload in my office. So that's it, she asked. Family drama exposed, company potentially saved, sister in crisis, parents humbled, all in one Christmas Eve. More or less. And how do you feel about it all? The question gave me pause. How did I feel? Vindicated, certainly, but also oddly lighter, as if setting down a burden I hadn't fully acknowledged carrying. Like, I can finally stop being 2 different people, I answered finally. H.W. Mitchell and Hazel Mitchell can be the same person now. In the weeks that followed, things moved quickly. Dad accepted my terms for the company restructuring, less out of genuine change of heart, I suspected, than pragmatic recognition of his limited options. Ashley surprised me by requesting an entry-level position, starting in research. I want to understand what you built, she explained in her characteristically direct way. Mom remained more distant, her worldview too shaken to adapt quickly. But she had begun tentatively asking questions about my actual life, rather than the fictional version she'd constructed. Most significantly, I established the Reed Foundation in honor of Lawrence, who had passed away 2 years earlier. Its mission providing resources, mentorship, and startup funding for young people escaping toxic family environment. The irony wasn't lost on me, transforming my own painful experience into something that might help others avoid similar struggles. My 2 worlds had collided at Christmas, but from the wreckage something new was emerging, not perfect, not completely healed, but authentic in a way the Mitchell family had never been before. As I stood in my office overlooking the Boston skyline, I remembered the moment that had catalyzed everything, James Hamilton's shocked recognition, the word boss that had bridged my carefully separated identities. Sometimes the truth needs just one small crack to finally break through. Thank you so much for staying with me through this story. If you've ever had to reinvent yourself or stand up to family expectations, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. Has anyone else had that moment where worlds collide and everything changes? Please like this video if you've ever had to be the architect of your own second chance. Subscribe for more stories about finding your power, and share with someone who might need to remember that success is the best revenge. Until next time, remember that sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to be exactly who you are.